What is going on? Let's sound the cannons times two. I'm going to make Justin, we're going to talk Nizyi Davis for sure. That's where we're starting. And then I'm going to make him talk some basketball too, because Greg Gard added a front court player as well. Let's sound the cannons on Wisconsin. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers. Thank you for making this one of your first listens every day. Really do appreciate you as always. Appreciate the time. Appreciate you giving just a little bit of it. So thank you so much. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager. Make sure you hire the right people for your job. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions do apply. We got to sound cannons, Justin. We're going to sound one for each, but we're going to start with football, start with Nizyi Davis. We're going to sound that cannon. I know this is a guy we both are pretty high on.
Fire the recruiting cannons. Another one is headed to Madison on Wisconsin.
All right, let's talk about it. Nizyi Davis in the hat game. We talked about him before, 6'4", 6'5", more of a 6'5" tight end, good athletic ability, upside, great hands, route runner. Thoughts on Nizyi Davis popping for the Badgers here?
Other than Marshall Pritchett, this is the top of the board guy to me, based off the film. I think that he projects really well as a guy who can get up the seam. I think that he's very physical. We talked about him before a little bit. I said that he reminds me of Lance Kendricks, just a little bit bigger. And I think if you can get a player like that at tight end, you are in a really good spot. For those who don't remember, he flat out carved up a really athletic Miami team in a bowl game. That guy could play, and he played on Sundays. So you get a guy like that, and I think we're in a good spot. I really like him. I think he's a 4-star. I think that his rating will come up as more time goes on. I don't care if the rating never gets to that point. I will tell you right now, I think he's a 4-star based off of the athletic attributes that are there. The guy can play. He's very athletic for the tight end position.
I love him. Like I love the athleticism. I love the upside. Like you have to. Here's the thing: if you're the Badgers, and there's other schools in this category, Justin, like Iowa, North Carolina, you're not going to recruit the elite athletes that are finely tuned, because there's like 7 of them. And they go to Bama, Ohio State, Georgia, Notre Dame. So you have to find guys who are super athletic that you can coach up. Right? It's the only way you're going to be able to beat the elite schools. And that's what this guy is. You mentioned Lance Kendricks. I got a different comp. Because Kendricks is like, that's probably as close to a Badger comp as you're going to get. And I see Tyler Streeter mentioning Travis Beckham. I think those guys were wound a little tighter. They were a little more explosive, but not quite as big. I kind of like Noah Fant as a comp, the former Iowa tight end.
That's probably a good one. Travis Beckham, I don't agree with. I think he was closer to like a wide receiver type player than what you're going to see from this is a guy that's going to go out there. He will flat out push around secondary guys. Like he's just got that kind of size and physicality to him.
Yeah, I agree. Like he's not physically really imposing, but he's physically willing to throw his body into people, which he is aggressive. He wants it. You can tell he's got some dog in him. He will decleat a linebacker who's not paying attention. He will decleat a guy who's not paying attention. Again, it reminds me a little bit of Noah Fant, the Iowa tight end. That's the high upside of it, but a guy who can block, but will also get down the seam. Fant was like a 4-5 guy. Davis is probably like a 4-6 guy.
I think he's a 4-6 guy. Honestly, he may be a 4-5 guy by the time he leaves college. Like I don't think Fant was a 4-5 guy when he came in. He developed.
I doubt it. Yeah, I love it, Justin. I do want to ask you a question. I want to keep talking here on Davis, but before we end this segment, take last year's tight ends, Steck, Booker, and put Davis in that mix. How do you rank that group coming when they came into the program?
I would probably rank it, me personally, I would have Davis, Steck, then Booker. Okay. And I don't dislike any of them. I think that room is getting really a lot of quality talent in it. Somebody's going to hit. There is going to be somebody in there that is an above average tight end out of that group. We have waited a long time to have something like this. One of the things that I didn't like about our previous tight end recruiting, it seemed like we were really devoid of speed at times. We didn't really have somebody that could stretch the seam. We had guys that were more considered jack of all trades tight ends rather than guys who were athletes. and that's changed dramatically with the group that's coming in here. These guys may not be perfect in terms of the way that you want a blocking tight end, but they will most definitely cause problems for linebackers in coverage. And you're probably going to have to cover them with a safety. I think all three of them are that type of guy.
Yeah, I agree that it felt like we were losing the ability to have receiving threats at tight end. We were kind of giving more physical, slower guys.
Yep.
I would probably go Steck first. I think the likelihood of him hitting is so high, but he's a different player, right? He's a different player than Davis. Davis is the high upside guy who's going to be, if he hits,
he offers more receiving threat, I think, than with Steck.
And I think he offers more problems for defensive coordinators if he hits, right? Because he's like Jackson McGonan, who
bigger. Yeah.
But bigger. Right. Exactly. Like he has that type of receiving ability, but I think he's more physical at the point of attack. And I think he's going to be a little more useful on first and second down as well. I think we agree. That's
I think he moves really fluid for a guy his size. And I think that's something that, like, you watch him and you could look at him and be like, I could see him, definitely see him split out wide and playing as on third down. And we're just going to mismatch a guy in the red zone because he's going to be a problem at 6. They haven't listed 6'4". I would guess he's 6'4", 6'5", but he's a guy who can also really high point. Like there's a one-handed catch of him bouncing around out there after he committed today that I'm like, man, when was the last time we saw a dude like that we had at tight end? Like Owen Daniels. Ferguson had a couple
nice catches.
He did.
But he's not quite the athlete. So, Ferguson's an elite player, like third round pick who's done well in the NFL. But your point is taken. Like it was basically Ferguson and nobody else, right? He was a one-man show for about 4 years. Now we're building depth, right? We're stacking talent. That's the other thing that we talked about with cornerbacks, right? Last year's class was great, and then we're following it up with this year's class. Last year's group of tight ends was really good, and now you're following it up with Davis. Like you're stacking talent, and because of that, you hit it on the head on the nail. Some of these guys are going to hit because you're getting so many of them, and that's what you have to do to be an elite team.
This class in general, before we move on, is just flat out. It may not have the super high level guys in terms of the guys that are like 93 composite type guys. This is a really strong depth class coming in. And by depth class, that is not me saying that these guys can't be really high quality starters or even stars. What I'm saying is that by no means is this class worse than it's worse in the conventional sense of if you want to really look at it truly from a rating standpoint. But this is another class that if you stand it alone or put it on its own merits, it's a super strong class.
The other thing with this class, and I wrote it, I'll come off to the side, athletes, and more athletes.
Oh yeah.
It's almost like Badger football is a club. And there's a sign that says, if you're not an athlete, you can't get in the door right now.
They're not letting us, Ryan. They're not letting us.
The club is full. Sorry. Oh, you want a 4-5? Come on in. Right. Like they're just stacking athletes at corner, at safety, at linebacker. Obviously, Posa is committing Thursday. There's good vibes there. If you add him, that's another athlete. There's just athletes that they're stacking across the roster. And again, that's what you have to do to compete with the elite schools. Smoke on Hilton is another one. Give really quick. Give me. I don't know if we've talked about Hilton. What's your quick Hilton thoughts?
I told Rajiv yesterday when we were talking about it on our show that I look at him and Muiz. And Muiz to me is the high upside guy that you look at that potentially turns himself into a first round draft pick based off athleticism, because you just can't teach a 6'4" guy that potentially has the ability to run and get up and move. I look at Hilton as like the second or third round pick that just does everything really well and is a really strong guy, but doesn't necessarily have that. He's not a 4.3 guy. He's not a guy that I think is ultra quick, but he's not bad in any of these categories. But I do think he has really strong route running, and I think he's got really good hands and body control. Those things will translate. He has a chance to be our best wide receiver.
Yeah. Hilton, I think I told Rajiv this too. So you and I have both talked to Rajiv about Hilton, but we haven't really talked to each other a bunch. The more I watched him, the more I liked him. Like the more you watch him, the more you see the route running, the hands, the ball awareness, the tracking. He has a couple deep catches. This is something that somebody brought up to me once. He said, watch receivers on a lot of elite high school receivers, right? They're wide open vertically, and the quarterbacks can't throw them the ball, so they have to stop and catch it, right? We see that all the time with receivers at the high school level, the elite ones. But the really good receivers, they don't fully slow down. They kind of track the ball, catch it, and still score. Whereas the guys who like the ball awareness have to stop, turn around, jump, and catch it. They get tackled. Hilton has a lot of that. Just you can tell he's well schooled, well coached. He understands the nuances, runs the routes, and he's 6'1", 6'2" with strong hands. There's a lot to like there.
For sure.
You're right, though. He doesn't have the high upside of Moise.
Yeah, I think he has a chance to, like I said, he has a chance. He could easily be an all-conference guy by the time he leaves here. It's just he may not have that super flashy stuff that he does that some of the other guys might.
Mm-hmm. But let me ask you this. Doesn't it feel like this receiver room needs one guy like that?
Yeah, of course. You need somebody you can lean on. If you had to tell me one guy out of this group that I can trust to make a third down catch, it's him. Like he's he's got the highest floor of any of the receivers by far. Yep. And looking at it, if they get all three of those guys, I said it before in the Discord, there's a chance Wisconsin could end up with 3 4-star wide receivers. They could all end up composite 4 stars by the time this is all said and done. Now, I don't think any of them are going to be like mid 4 stars, but they're going to be like, when was the last time Wisconsin even had 2 4-star wide receivers in a class?
I could tell you. Do you know who they are? I wonder if in the chat if people know.
We had a class with 2 of them.
Wasn't it Darian Watkins and Crenwick Sanders under Gary Anderson?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that is very true. And one of them was on campus for a total of 2 weeks. And the other one, I think I saw his greatest highlight ever on the open practice that happened at Camp Randall, where he went flying up, dove backwards, and caught one. And never be heard again.
Those were both 4-star receivers, the jewels of the Gary Anderson era. One got homesick and left, and the other guy transferred after like 2 years. Interesting stuff as always. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back, and I'm going to force Justin to talk about a little bit of basketball. Then we'll get your comments and more on this 25 recruiting class coming up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our good friends of the show. And as always, just a quick second to say thank you guys for tuning in. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at LinkedIn. Justin, you have a job, right?
I hope so. Somebody's paying me.
Right. I mean, hopefully he still has a job come tomorrow, but Justin has a job. I have a job. Listen, if you need to find a job or if you're a person looking to hire, go to LinkedIn. There's not a better place to do it. That is the number one place to find all your people. And it's like recruiting, right? You got to bring the good talent. You want to bring in a 5-star receptionist. You go to LinkedIn to find that. You want to bring in a 5-star water cooler technician. You got to find that on LinkedIn. You don't want any schlubs, any riffraff coming to the door. Let LinkedIn with their screening tools get rid of that. Save time, save money, make it easier on yourself. Find the right people for your team faster and for free with LinkedIn.com/LockedOnCollege. Post your job for free at LinkedIn.com/LockedOnCollege. They are the number one hiring platform for a reason. LinkedIn.com/LockedOnCollege. All right, Justin, you want to talk basketball?
Sure. I
You
heard
and
we
I
got
haven't
the big
talked
man
about
from semi-pro.
Yeah, not that guy. Listen, I'll take him too. It depends on which one I get. We haven't talked basketball in a minute, right? So this just happened today. A lot of news. Serbian forward. I'm gonna try on this name. Andrija Vukovic commits to Greg Gard. 6'11", 260, coming out of Serbia. Averaged 6.1 points per game last year. 65% from the field. 2.5 rebounds per game. 0.1 blocks per game. So this is not, if we're just just box score scouting him, this is not a guy that seemed to block a lot of shots, but a guy who had really good field goal percentages. He's not a shooter, right? I know he shot 66%. That was on like 5 attempts.
Yeah.
And his free throw shooting was 56%. Usually free throw shooting correlates to 3-point shooting.
This
is not a guy you're bringing in to face the floor, but 6'11". Here's what I like. And then I'll kick it over to you. Here's what I like. 6'11", 260. He's 20 years old. He played on a really good Serbian team, and he carved out a role on a really good Serbian team. I like all that.
Yeah, I think that he provides depth. Listen, we had a black hole at backup center last year. This guy will provide some depth and size, and he's a little more mature than what we had last year with Nolan. You know, you have somebody this year that now you have that you can lean on to body people up a little bit in the post. So this is going to give you some flexibility. Now, the shooting percentage is good because it shows that he's pretty good at getting himself in a position to get easy shots. You don't shoot 66% unless you're really adept at sealing somebody on your back and being able to just put it up and in. I don't care about him being able to stretch. If he can get in the paint and make plays, it doesn't matter. He's got size. If he can get easy buckets, I'll take the easy buckets. I don't care if they're just glue plays. If he's making hustle plays and getting us 6-7 points a game, that's points that you're not expecting. We weren't getting last year. So what were his rebounding stats like? Because I couldn't find a lot on him when I tried to look him up.
Yeah, I did find game logs on him. So he had 2.5 rebounds per game. And then in the previous year, he played at a lower level, average 17 and 7 at a lower level, though, of Euroball. But as a 19-year-old, I think here's the thing, right? We've been on Greg Gard, rightfully so, for a lot of things. And this doesn't solve all of it. This is not like you're not bringing in Porzingis. This doesn't solve all of it. But one of the things we've really been after is you just need somebody who's more physical in the paint. When Steven Crowell is struggling, when he gets in foul trouble, here's the thing. A lot of those kids, I shouldn't say kids, a lot of those young men from those former Soviet bloc countries, Serbia, Croatia, Yugoslavia, they play kind of like grown bullies, right? They come up a little different than you come up playing in the AAU circuits in the country. So if he can come and add a little bit of physicality, right, at 260, he should be able to do that. He has touch around the rim. You have to shoot 65%, like you said. He can play right away, and he's got 4 years of eligibility, and he's already 20 years old. I don't know, as a backup big, I don't know what else you could have asked for.
No, I mean, listen, not to beat on our whipping boy at the power forward position, but this is a guy that can provide you some minutes where he actually belongs playing in the post. I mean, that's just unfortunately was not the case this last season for what's his name? I can't think of it right now.
Carter Gilmore.
Can
I pause really quick? I love how you've like almost completely flushed basketball from your brain for a little bit. It's like compartmentalized. You don't even remember players' names. Like
Ryan enjoys my random text whenever news breaks on basketball stuff because he knows kind of what to expect from me on it. Listen, I will support. I'll give him the opportunity, and I will be realist about it. Gard is on notice this season. He's got to show me season here. He's got to prove that he can get things together and that he can put together a team that does not only solid in the regular season but can do something in the tournament. You can't be losing first round games to a 12 seed.
Yeah, I agree. And this won't solve that. I want to be super clear.
Yeah,
this is a
depth piece. Anyone that wants to bag on it, you're looking at this the wrong way. If we could get, like last year, we would have been overjoyed to have somebody that could go out there and give us 6-7 minutes at the post and not be, 180 pounds, like not to beat up on Winter, but he didn't have the weight to be able to really get in there and fight. And when he did, he unfortunately got foul trouble because he wasn't capable of holding his ground. He didn't have the base yet.
Well, this also, we have a comment over here from Double Badger. Does this move Winter more to a backup 4? I think this is also good for Winter because I don't know if you want
he can play more at the 4 now.
Yeah. And I don't think you want him having to play the 5. Like there's certain teams next year. Winter's going to get stronger next year unless something goes wrong. If he doesn't, there's a failure either on his part or the Badgers' part. Let's just be clear. He has to get stronger. But there's still teams next year you're not going to want him playing the 5 against because they're going to beat the crap out of him. That's just not his game. I think it allows him to play more the 4 because I think this is a player you're bringing in to play right away and play 5 to 10 minutes. That's it. But those 5 to 10 minutes are important because those are 5 to 10 minutes. That's your point. You're not having to play maybe a Carter Gilmore or you're not having to be undersized, right? That's not on Gilmore. Yeah. It gives you 5 to 10 minutes of size. And I think that's super important for this team potentially. Kevin Brown says, can he guard the pick and roll?
Can anyone of them? We'll find out.
I would love to tell. So I am on a search for film for him. The only film is, as Justin pointed out, like years old, and he looks okay.
2020.
But
he's probably like 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
He had a good game though in that one.
Yeah. we are really nerding out trying to dissect 2020 film of him, but I hopefully have a little something coming. We can dive deeper
into him. Not a bad
him.
athlete from the film that was out there. Like he's a guy that moves pretty well. He runs the floor pretty well. I'd have to see how he's matured. I have to assume that he hasn't just suddenly become put on bad weight and now he's just, lumbering down the court. So he's a guy that should be pretty athletic for us.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it. Hopefully we have more information coming on him. We're going to dive a little deeper if we can, but I think ultimately, Justin, people have wanted a backup 5 with physicality. At least Greg Gard went out and got one that could fit that role. If it'll work out, we have to work.
Yeah.
But you kind of have to be happy with this, right? At least Greg Gard's trying. He's trying to fill that hole.
I will give him his flowers on this one. Yeah, I'm glad to see we got a backup because I would not have liked going into next season. I think it's just doing a disservice to Winter to turn him into a backup center because that's not really what he's meant to be.
Yeah, I agree with that. I actually 100% agree with that. I think that's a really good point. All right, let's take one more quick break. Come back. We're going to take some of your comments. Finish off on some 25 recruiting talk. Who are the biggest remaining targets that Justin wants to see land in Wisconsin? Overall thoughts on this class and some of your stuff. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at FanDuel. FanDuel remains your number one source for all your sports betting needs. Whatever you need to do over there, futures, parlays, teasers, spreads, it's all there. Justin, where would you rather take a futures bet on? Badgers winning the Big Ten title, okay? Or the Packers getting to the Super Bowl?
I'm all in on this Packer team.
Okay.
I think Love showed me a lot last year that I wasn't expecting. But yeah, I'm in on them, especially with that getting a new defensive coordinator was huge for that team because that killed them in a lot of games last year.
There was a stretch of last season, not to turn this into a Packers show, but Love was terrifying for a stretch of last season, like terrifyingly good. And if he can build on that with some young weapons and a better defense.
Oh yeah, those receivers are only going to get better this year. And they were incredible for a lot of them for first or second year guys. Now they're going to pick up all the little tricks to become even more capable.
And if you want to put some money on it, FanDuel.com/lockedon, Justin. I don't know if you can do that in Wisconsin yet, right? Is that still a no-go?
I can't do FanDuel, but I could definitely make a bet at a few places. They just won't let me touch the college teams, jerks.
Oh, painful. Painful. Let's get some comments. I also want to ask you, Justin, out of the guys on the board, and I also want to take Posa and Hilton out of it because there's buzz on those guys, nothing confirmed. Who else out there is your biggest remaining like home run target? I would love to land this guy.
Oh man, I gotta really think.
I'll let you. Because I've already thought of this. I'll give you mine, and then I'll let you. For me, it's Lewis. The running back Byron Lewis out of Florida, American heritage. I've told you this before. I think he's in that tier of running backs last year with Dupree and Jones. I don't know how exactly I would rank them, but I think he's that level of talent. And it would also be another win that this staff can point to and say, we can go toe-to-toe, at a pedigree high school against pedigree schools for a blue chip player. Honestly, and as long as we can get him on campus, we can win that battle. So to me, it's Byron Lewis because I don't know who else ran at running back, and I think he's an elite talent from a very talent-rich high school.
I'll give you a couple guys. I still think it's Cade Pachak for me. If he ends up, it's hard to find any concrete information on him about which way he's leaning, other than people giving their own thoughts are on the situation because he just doesn't do media. So unless he's actively told something to one of the teams, and it doesn't sound like he's committed to anybody at this point yet, I'll die on that hill until he's not ours, but he would be a huge, huge addition to the defensive line room. Other than that, I would say Muiz, I think, adds something to that wide receiver room that we don't currently have. I think the kid that they got from Boston College is somewhat similar, but I think that you have even more size, and I actually think that Muiz has a chance to mature into a little bit bigger body than what was the kid that came in? Griffin, yeah.
Vernon Griffin, right?
Yes.
Boston College
he's a little bit thinner framed.
Mm-hmm.
That's Muiz has a chance to be a thicker guy. He could legit carry 215, I think, 220. And if he does that, that's going to be a problem for a 6'1" or 6 foot corner that weighs 190 pounds.
You're gonna have to put a safety on him, right? And then that creates all sorts of problems for a defense.
And he's still going to have length. Like even if you put a safety on him, you can't deal with 6'4" if a guy can run.
D.A. Wolf says, good to have Justin for this one. I agree. He's built a little bigger and more physical, right, than Griffin. Like what he reminds me of a little bit. You remember Marquise Mason? Like, 6'3", 6'4", and super athletic, But if he had hit, it would have been like, still remember spring practice, and the coach was talking about, like, if this guy hits, he's like Terrell Owens.
Yeah.
And of course, he never hit. He had knee injuries. But Moise is that type of upside, right? He's similar to Davis. He's just a high upside, high athletic player where if he hits, he's an NFL guy. It just needs refinement and some work there. So I think that's a big one. Agree with you on Cade. It just feels like we're not going to get Cade. So I guess that's why I didn't put him in the list.
Yeah, no, I feel you there. So looking at what we have left for targets on the board, if we get a class of Telemac, I don't know if Pavy's coming in. I'd like to see if that's going to happen or not. And say somebody like Petaway. do you think that is a good enough class? Now, I'm not saying it's what we want, but do you think that's a good enough class based off of compared to what we traditionally would get versus what we need to be getting? Now, obviously, you'd like to be getting 4 stars, but do you think it's a good, like, do you think those are all rotational players?
I mean, it's a great question, right? So I look at it 2 ways. And for Telemac, you're talking Wilderness and Telemac, for those who maybe don't follow recruiting quite as closely, kid out of Florida, bigger body. It's better than what we used to get, right? For a long time, our defensive line recruiting wasn't getting guys like that.
Scheme way better, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's a bigger frame. There's more upside, but it's a step down pretty significantly from last year's class. And I thought last year's class needed to get stacked on, right? When you look at Wilner, you look at Johnson, I think those are 2 guys who I would put ahead of Telemac, who I'd put ahead of.
Oh yeah, I
put them ahead of Petaway.
Disagree with that. The question is are these guys? Do they have the potential to be capable backups to those guys?
Yes, I think they do that, but I don't know if they're difference makers as much as
no, and I don't think they are. What I want to know is, and that's my question to me personally too, is if these guys end up being guys who can provide quality reps behind those guys. Mm-hmm. To give them a break, that's all they really need to be. Now, obviously, we want to be stacking difference makers. I think, and we discussed last night in the show, I know you weren't around for that one. It's asking a lot for Whitlow to come into this class and come guns a-blazing when he came in the spring. He basically had to jump in and establish relationships with the board, 3-4 months before coming into the official visits. That's a lot to ask of a coach to establish the type of, relationships that you need to be able to get somebody to commit. Looking forward on him, this year is kind of a wash for him. If he can bring in players that are capable of providing depth in that room, to me, that's a win. If he can come in next year, that's the class where he's got to start proving it. And I think that he's a capable recruiter. I do think the other part of it that I said was he came in early. This is also a substantial jump up in level of play that he's got to deal with. We can talk about the way recruiting is done, and it's just not the same at the MAC level and at the other levels as it is at the blue blood level. The blue blood level is so much more cutthroat and dirty than it is at the MAC level because resources are substantial at this level. Let's be quite honest. The level of resources that these top level teams have is just to the point where it's like they don't know what to do with everything. So they can sit there and throw money at things and basically go above and beyond. There's a reason why Bama has 37 analysts on staff and stuff like that under Saban, because they can afford to do it. Well, that's what you're trying to do, compete with here when you get up to this level. And that's going to be a difference for Whitlow. Like, he's going to have to be on more than he's ever been in his life. I do think he's a really good coach. And I actually think he's got the type of personality to be a high level recruiter, but I think he's got to get his legs under him at this level and really be able to dive in.
Yeah, as per usual, man, that's really good insight and a really good perspective from you. And I would take it even a step further. He wasn't just at the MAC school. He was at a service academy.
Yeah.
Like, you want to talk about –
he was Grand Valley before, and then he was
Air Force.
He was at – well, he was Miami of Ohio, I believe, for like –
and then he went to Air Force.
Yeah.
I know he went – like, you're not going to do any type of dirty, shady recruiting at Air Force. No. And I hate to say it,
and you have to have people that are capable of getting into the service academy. Like, it's a completely different ballgame.
From height and weight standpoints. And I don't mean that he has to do something dirty at Wisconsin. I'm just saying it is more cutthroat.
No, he's dealing with teams that are willing to go dirtier than what he's used to. I made the point. We are going to get negatively recruited against for defensive line recruits until we prove that we can get guys that can be NFL guys. They have to prove you can be a high-level defensive lineman at Wisconsin in order to be able to shut the mouth of the other teams that are blue bloods who could say, look how many guys we got in the pros. We brought it up with Posa in the recruiting against Oregon for this one. Wisconsin does not have anything that they are above Oregon in that if we're looking at that like objectively from program standpoint, other than we've got pro pedigree at the outside linebacker position or linebacker position in general, and potentially relationships. That's what Wisconsin's hanging his hat on there. You have more NIL, you have more prestige, you have a program that is expected to go to the playoffs this year, if not win the national championship in Oregon. So Wisconsin is fighting against that. And those are those teams. That's exactly what they are selling. Wisconsin was 7-6 last year. We're going to be in the playoff. So that's what you're fighting against. And that's what you have to be able to come to the table with and be able to combat and say, no, we're going to be just fine. We can play these guys. And when it comes to Oregon, they're going to get the opportunity to say, you know what, we'll go head to head with them on the field. And maybe Wisconsin shows really well against them this year. Even if they don't win, maybe they can give them a game. We did it in the past.
Honestly, in that game, that's all I'm hoping for, right? Is just keep it close and be competitive. And you're right. Like Oregon can outsell us in so many facets, but the linebacker pedigree is all Wisconsin. And then we know this staff builds relationships. We know Max and Pat build
relationships. They can recruit their butts off. I would say the recruiting pedigree, but like the coach's ability, that's probably a wash between the two staffs. I would bet that they're that talented on both sides.
I think so. There's not many like we have in our recruiting department. I would say going back to defensive line, man, and Badgers board mouth says not a good enough class to compete with the new Big Ten. I want to loop back to a point you made. You're right. It's really hard on Whitlow to come in guns blazing. However, it's not like that doesn't also like you can give him a pass while also acknowledging that kind of hurts the program, right?
It does. But I think we also knew that defensive line recruiting was going to take 3 to 4 years to build to where we need to be.
Right, but having a year where you don't really hit on guys that you need pushes that out another year, right? That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't put that on Whitlow because he's coming in mid-cycle, but it does hurt the program in that we need to stack talent at that position and not take a year where we take a step back and then step back forward.
See, I don't think that it's necessarily a major step back because if we're looking at these guys' potential to provide actual depth, yes, they may not make the plays that you'd like them to make, but it's not like you're getting guys out there that are incapable of playing on the same field. You may not want them to be out there for like 4 straight drives, but I think that I think the 3 guys that they're bringing in, if they are well developed, and I think Whitlow is capable of getting the most out of players, I think they can go out there and provide you a couple drives just to get the other guys a breather. And I think that that's fine. I don't know if you look at any of them and say, other than Telemak, I look at him. I think that if he hits the right way, if his technique hits, and I think he's got good burst for his size, there's a chance you can turn him into a guy who's a problem. Because I think he can get to 260, 270, and with his length and burst, he's really going to be tough to deal with off the edge. Now he's got a lot of work to do to get there, but I think he's capable if it all comes together.
Yeah, he's got the frame that you dream on for a defensive end, that's for sure. Mr. Rocktober says "Expluza," which means boom in Serbian. Sorry, I missed that one earlier. Our Serbian
Google can be trusted.
Let's see. Mike, I probably just swore in Serbian.
You're now banned in Serbia.
That's probably some terrible thing I just said. You better not have been pulling my leg, Mr. Rocktober. That better not be a terrible thing. Mike Witt says, any smoke on Gentry? I don't have any. I think he wants to, I think his heart wants Madison. And this isn't a knock on him. A lot of people, it's important to play close to family, right? And I think family really matters there. And family wants him closer.
Ryan, we can just be blunt here. Even if we knew something on this, we would not be the ones to ruin either his moment or out information from the athletic department on it. We would love to be able to tell you something on it, but we're not going to be the ones that put it out there. Like if they're working on this, I do not want to set them back because of the fact that something came out that what was going around in the background, because that just makes things harder for the staff to have to work through.
Yep, we're not really into innuendo is the wrong word. Like we're not really trying to throw stuff out there, on what we're doing. But we love Gentry. Like Gentry's film is awesome. He's very much like Stroud, athletic boundary cornerback that can run. Would love to have him in the class. Justin, any other thoughts with Nizyi Davis, with Greg Gard? You can go on a little more basketball talk if you want to.
No, I'm really high on Davis. I think that this class has a chance to really come together. Like I said, you and I have talked about it multiple times. There are numerous guys in this class that I think could be bumped to 4 stars by the time we're done. I think there's a outside chance we do end up with as many composite 4 stars as what we had last year. The question will be do we get the guys that end up bumping into that mid 3-star or mid 4-star range that are guys that you look at and you're like, wow, those are cornerstones to a class. And I'm not totally sure we have those, but there's a lot of guys with super high upside in this class that nothing would shock me of them turning into stars.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I love the athleticism in this class in general, from top to bottom. Like I said, it's almost like you're not welcome in this club if you can't run a 4.5 or if you don't have a great shuttle time. I do want to loop back because I forgot we're talking defense linemen. It would be unfair to not point out that they did land 2 transfer guys too with Lane and Elijah Hills. So like that's definitely worth pointing out as well. Justin, let's finish on this one. Mike Witt, hot take. Mabry gets snaps this year. True or false?
Listen, I'm going to say, to be perfectly blunt on this, the only way he's likely to get on the field is if we have a game where it's a blowout and then a lock gets a drive or 2. Like if it's done by like midway through the 3rd quarter, you may see Locke go out there and take 4 or 5 drives, and then you may see him to come in like the last 2 drives. He'll probably, let's put it this way. If we want to do over under on how many pass attempts Mabry has this season, I would say it's probably going to be less than 10.
And I would take, if you put it at 9.5, I'd take the under, by the way.
Yeah, I probably would too. I think he could have 7 or 8, and it might be the maximum that we see. Although this staff is probably more so likely to let him throw the football than we would have had under Christ.
Mike, I assume by what you're saying, Mike, that you're saying meaningful snaps. I don't think that's going to happen.
That's definitely not happening.
I love Mabry. I don't think that's going to happen. 2 more quick comments. L. Mills just joined the show. I thought something bad happened by the tone of this chat. They're all haters of basketball, Mills. All of them. Like, all they said is go get a backup 5. Greg Gard does that, and then they lose their mind that he did it. No, it's all good. And one more for you, Justin. Tyler Strieber says, defend Daryl Peterson being in your top 10 when we did our top 10 rankings. That's crazy.
I am going over the smoke that's coming out of spring practice. Everyone I've heard from has said that he was great this spring and that he was ahead of the Lowry and Pius. If that's the case, if that's the dude we're getting, that's what my number is put on him. I need to see it. So he's like we talked show me year with Gard. We're in a show me year for Peterson with me because I think the other 2 guys have more athletic pedigree and I think they're more likely. But I do think that there's a chance that Peterson was flat out pushed this offseason and has not previously. And now he's worried about losing snaps because I will tell you right now, those other 2 guys are coming for pro stock right now. He is not going to be on the field if he's not making plays.
I'll say this, right? If we see the version that we saw last year, those snaps are going to get cut dramatically.
That will be Pius. You'll see Pius out on the field if that's the case, because there's been people that have said he's the best pass rusher on the team.
I think you'll see a couple different guys, but I'll say this too. Peterson could absolutely be a guy. And sorry, I keep going wrong because you guys keep having amazing comments in the chat and you're baiting me. You're baiting me into answering more questions. And I'm a sucker for it. But here's the other thing. Peterson could look dramatically better in 20 snaps, not having to take 45. Right.
This is true. Like there's a solid chance he was worn down.
There's an element of, I mean, you're a baseball guy too, Justin. Starting pitchers, they used to reserve something because they used to throw 130 pitches. Now they throw 70, so they throw harder. There's an element to that with Daryl Peterson. He might have a little more fastball because he's not throwing as many innings this year. Yeah. It's possible. All right, we're gonna wrap it up there. You guys in the chat are killing me, man. Greg Gard signed Genghis Khan as a point guard.
Count Chocula.
Anyway, on Wisconsin, Justin and I are on the same page here. Nizyi Davis is a stud. Absolute high upside pickup. More to come as always. But on Wisconsin, Justin, follow him at Bucky Report. JJ, go check out what they're doing as always on the Bucky Report. We will talk tomorrow. Thanks for joining us. Let's go. Oh, you know what? I never fired the second cannon. We're gonna go out with second cannon.
Fire the recruiting cannons. Another
Gard
one is headed to
misfires
Madison
again.
on Wisconsin.
Let's go, Gard.